Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the debut record from Crownshift, out May 10th on Nuclear Blast. The album has 8 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and they are a Finnish metal band. Now, when it comes to the design of this record, I have a lot to digest here, and I have a lot to process when I went into this album, because it feels like it's going against the grain. And the first element that makes me feel like I'm going against the grain here is that normally I like short records. 8 songs, 41 minutes, this is normally in my wheelhouse. But after listening to this album and seeing the track listing and the design that they put forward, the album feels a little bit short. And the reason why it feels a little bit short and why I'm asking for more songs when I'm normally asking for less is because the second half of the album feels a little bit more diluted, not as intense, not as aggressive, and not with as much of a focus as the first half. This is an album that is top heavy because it has the bigger bangers, or the songs that are easier to connect with, the songs that have that intensity intertwined in the fabric of the tracks right at the top. And then when you get into the second half of the album that really starts with My Prison, a ballad that defines the middle point of the record, you start to get into tracks that don't have that same one direction, that don't have that same focus, that don't have the similar attributes as the songs in the first half of the album. Songs like Mirage, which is an instrumental track, To the Other Side, which is the closing song that has elements of an instrumental track, and it has vocal elements that are really unique to this song, and you don't see them anywhere else. Having these tracks and the bottom end of the record really allows you to see the difference between how the album starts and how the album finishes. I don't mind the album finishing on a different note from where it started, but it does make the experience feel a little bit shorter, like you didn't finish the race, like you just came slightly short of crossing that threshold, the finishing line. And this album, with this design, with this choices of songs, as far as the closing half of the record is concerned, it definitely gives me that impression of being unfinished. It takes nothing away from the quality of the individual songs, just as an overall experience, it doesn't feel like a complete body of work. Now, once you get into the sound, this record is impossible to define. It doesn't fall under one single umbrella, it doesn't fall under one single genre, so it's an album that has a lot of different characteristics. It's melodic death metal, it's groove metal, it's heavy metal, it's prog rock, it's prog metal. I mean, there's just a lot of different influences coming into the sound, dictating where these songs are going and helping better define what perhaps is going to become the signature sound of this band, which might be the fact that they don't have just one signature sound. They just have great sound quality that brings elements from different genres and allows them to coexist with one another in a very seamless way, because that's how this album comes across. You're moving in from a melodic death metal style track into something that feels slightly more proggy, then you move almost into a thrash metal riff, coming back into a melodic death metal, and in certain songs you start to move into a more of a prog territory. It's an album that has a lot of life, and it's very rich in its sound, and it has great production behind it, because all of these influences come across in a very simple way. They don't overlap one another, and you don't feel like the songs are becoming super busy, hard to deconstruct, hard to process, and therefore hard to digest. The production behind this album definitely streamlines the approach and helps you get the most out of each and every single song, but also get the most out of each and every single element that these songs are built with. And to me, there are two cornerstones, two pillars, if you will, the guitars and the vocals, and this is not to say that the others don't have an important role, because they do. But these two to me really stand out as the main focuses of what this album is all about. So when you talk about the sound, you really have to start with the guitars. Very textured, very rich, offering a lot of nuances. And when you look at all of these different influences that the overall sound puts forward, they're all starting with the guitars, starting and finishing with the guitars. The guitar work on this album is phenomenal. It's not necessarily over the top, maybe a little bit more over the top in terms of how much flair the guitar solos have throughout the entire album, But outside of the guitar solos, it's more about the quality of the execution, adding value to the song constructions, creating incredible arrangements, and not necessarily showcasing something just for the sake of it. It's not trying to be flashy, it's just trying to create really cool melodies, really cool guitar riffs, really cool sounds that create that richness of experience that the guitars ooze song in and song out. And that's why I feel like they are definitely one of the cornerstones, one of the pillars of this album. Now, between these two pillars of guitars and vocals, you have drums and bass. The drums on this album are super heavy. They are a lot heavier than what it might appear to be at first glance, because the overall album is perhaps groovier than it is heavier. It has a lot of intensity, it has a lot of drive, but I wouldn't call this a super heavy record. Like I said, a lot more groovier. But the drums are very heavy for an album that has this sort of sound, that has even hard rock elements. The drums are heavier than what one would expect. It's just how they are intertwined in the fabric of the sound. How they sit behind the guitars takes a little bit of the sting away from them, and it doesn't allow them to overpower the experience and be something that the listener can focus on. They're there to complement, they're there to create substance, they're there to add texture to the sound, but they give enough room and enough of a plateau for the guitars to be really the ones that become the focus of the experience. And the same thing could be said for the bass. The bass on this record is noticeable. Not on every single song you're going to feel it pop and come through, but you're going to hear it quite often throughout the album. And it always adds to the grooviness of the sound. Songs that have more of a groovier impact, the bass is more noticeable. Songs that have a little bit more of a melodic death metal sound, that have more of a driven sound, or even a hard rock sound, the bass is not as noticeable. Still there, but not as noticeable. So I like this ability to have the bass create certain impacts depending on the influences behind the tracks. Then you have the other pillar, and that is the vocals. I was really impressed with Tommy's vocal performance on this record. I knew him from other projects like Migraine and Damnation Plan, so I'm not totally surprised by the quality of his vocals and what kind of a vocalist he is, but he surprised me by how warm his delivery was. I knew he had the range, I know he has the ability, I know he brings quality to the table, but what surprised me the most was his ability to add warmth to the way he delivered some of the lyrics on some of these songs. Tracks that had a little bit more of a hard rock feel, that were more straight to the point, his voice changed the feeling, it changed the essence of the song, not only brought the lyrics to life, but really brought these songs to life. And he was someone on this album that didn't stay constant, that was as dynamic as the sound behind him, and that added incredible life and energy to the overall record and to each individual song. Obviously, these guys know what they're doing, and even though that this is a debut record, the sound quality and the songs that are delivered on this album don't showcase a band that's putting together an album for the first time, but that's where the experience comes in. My only issue with this record is definitely the design. It feels like it loses a little bit of steam. It feels incomplete at the end. It needed perhaps one or two more songs that could make the second bottom half of the album as impactful as the first half, and allow the overall experience to be a little bit more balanced. The way it is, it starts off with a lot of intensity, starts off with a lot of strength, but then it feels like it is not able to keep that energy level up throughout all 8 songs. Now, as far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with Stellar Halo. This is the opening song on the record, heavy melodic, and I really like the keys. The keys is something that I didn't mention earlier, but it's something that definitely has an impact on every single track, sometimes adding more melody, sometimes adding a little bit more of a vibe, of an atmosphere, but the keys are definitely one of the elements that are consistently used, and used normally with a very similar, not necessarily approach, but with a very similar end result in mind. And on this song, you see them right from the get-go. It's the opening track, and it's nice that they included that part of this opening track, because in my opinion, this is an opening song that really showcases what the entire album is all about. This is an album that's about guitars. This is an album that's about vocals. This is an album that's going to have great choruses, super bright, super melodic, very hooky, with great vocal performances that are very dynamic as the songs. And then obviously you sprinkle in those keyboards. This song has all of that. Heavy drums, rich guitars, and rich vocals. It's a track that really complements what the overall album is all about. It's a great calling card, and I think when you're putting an album together, the opening song is really important in order to catch the attention of the listener, and this song definitely does that. Next comes my favorite track on the entire album, Rule the Show. Killer drums. I think that's the first thing you'll notice when you listen to this song, is how heavy, how powerful the drums are. The keys add a nice atmosphere to the track, but they honestly don't take anything away from the heaviness of the drums and how thick and groovy the guitars are. The guitar sound on this song is really interesting because the thicker side of the sound merges really well with the heaviness of the drums. And then the groovier side of the sound breaks away from that, creating movement, making the song feel more robust, making the song feel bigger, giving a lot more bandwidth to the way the track comes across. The vocals are very warm, creating a very powerful combo with the sound behind it, really complementing it. And then it's a track that has, in my humble opinion, the best chorus on the entire record. Super hooky, super catchy. The vocal performance elevates that hookiness of the chorus, but the melody behind it really enhances it and does a phenomenal job. Like I said, my favorite song on the entire record. Very groovy track all around. Last but not least, The Devil's Drug. This is the heavier song on that second half of the album. It's definitely one that breaks the mold. Doesn't break the mold in terms of what the record is all about, at least not the first half of the album, but it breaks the mold because it feels almost out of place considering how unique it is and the overall sea of songs that are not unique at all. So it's a track that connects well with the beginning of the record, but almost feels out of place because it's so alone, considering the other tracks that surround it. But it's a great song. Like I said, the heaviest song on that second half of the album. It has a great drum and guitar sound, really creating a wall. This track really feels at times like there's a wall of sound coming at you, but it also knows how to break that wall into different breaks and allow you to appreciate what's coming out of the drums, what's coming out of the guitars, what's coming out of the bass, making the track very dynamic. And the vocals follow those same patterns of being very dynamic and energetic and matching the atmosphere and sound that the track has, not becoming uniform from beginning to end, but rather merging with what's around them. So great song from that perspective. This is it, Crownshift with their debut record, self-titled Crownshift, on May 10th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.